My last Obsidian tutorial video was at version 12.12 and we are now at 14.12, so there's been a lot of updates and I want to go through what's actually changed. In 12.13 we saw graph view timelapse animation improvements. Now I rarely go into my global graph view, but when you push on this button, this is the timelapse animation and there's been improvements to the animation and it now starts from the created date of the note. In 12.14 they did quite a few fixes. They made some note composer improvements and then added some things in the context menu. Most significant to me was removing the timelapse button from the local graph and then the changes to the note composer, which is a core plugin that allows you to merge files together. 12.15 added in global search when you highlight and right-click text. And I actually use this feature quite a lot because it saves me typing things out. So if I was to go into here, highlight this and right-click, I can then search for biologically secondary. And now you can see there's the reference because it's in there 3 times. There's the page I'm currently in. And there is another conference where John Sweller was actually talking about biological secondary skills and I made a note on it. 12.16 added so many new things. The main ones notable for me are the ability to copy the code block from the preview mode, the date and time change in the daily notes template, I don't need to put the format in, and the ability to middle click on the command palette. So for example, you can see this is a code block in the preview mode, so I'm in reading mode because live preview, and I can click copy and it will copy this code to my clipboard. You can see there it is, and then I can paste it in the command line. For my today template, I do keep the formats in there because I like to keep the formats consistent across, but you don't actually need all of this formatting in there anymore for it to work, which is very nice. And the middle click change means I can come over here and then I can go say daily note, I can middle click on my mouse and it will open up that daily note. The main highlights of 12.17 were the theme store has now received a massive update, that's probably what you're seeing now, and then this / commands, which some people still don't know about. For those unfamiliar with Obsidian and how themes work, if you go to the Appearance tab in Settings and go to Themes and Manage, this looked very, very different previously, and this is the biggest update that they had for the themes. You can see all of the community themes down here. You can filter through search, looking for developers' names or the theme that you're looking for, and then you can go to the dark mode as well, so you can see just the dark mode themes as well. These being the themes that I have installed and I don't actually use any of them apart from the default one. Then if you go into the core plugins and you type in /, you'll come up with the / commands. And what this means is instead of having to go to the command palette either through the shortcut Control P and bringing this up, you can actually go / and then start typing out whatever the command is, very much like Notion. Version 13.0 is when the insider builds came in and there were loads of different changes because this is when the live preview happened, the what you see, what you get editor mode actually came in. So for reference, you can see now we have reading, source mode and live preview. That happened in version 13.0. This is 14.12 and reading view and source mode were the only options. Now we have live preview, which is what you're seeing. 13.1, loads of live preview improvements. 13.2, loads more improvements. 13.3 saw loads more live preview improvements, a couple of improvements to plugins and other areas of Obsidian, and then lots of bug fixes, again relating to live preview. You guessed it, 13.4, more live preview improvements. 13.5 was very similar, but the shiny new things added in 13.5 relate to the outline core plugin, which I use all of the time now. So on the right side of Obsidian, you have the outline, which are the headings, and because of the update at 13.5, I can click and drag, and the FAQ section is now on top of minds, and then if I drag that down, you can see there it is. And the other thing is, if I come over here, click, drag, and then drop that on the page, now I have a link to that section in the page, so I don't have to manually type that out, I can just drag it from the outline. 13.6, more live preview improvements. 13.7, basically the same. 13.8 again is very similar, but they renamed the preview mode to the reading view, which we've seen in the previous recording. And they also made an Obsidian Sync update, which also relates to more recent updates around Obsidian Sync. So going into the Sync Core plugin tab, you can see here is the view and bulk restore, so you can view all of the deleted files. And you can see here are all the changes that I've made through Sync recently, which obviously you can see I did a big sync 2 hours ago, and you can actually restore them if you want to restore them. 13.9 more improvements. This just shows how much time and effort they put in making the live preview work. It's not an easy switch. Again, 13.10 more live preview improvements, and they also added right to left text support. Now for me, I write left to right, so it doesn't really make much of a difference, but you can choose to go right to left if you want to. So coming into editor, going over to the main pane, going down to the bottom of the display section, you can see right to left. Now, I don't want to click that because that's not me, but that's what you can do. 13.11 is where the editor status was actually added, which is what I showed you earlier in the recording, which is in Core Plugins, Editor Status, which then goes into the bar at the bottom. So if you click on it, you can go to the reading view, you can go to the source mode view, or you can go to the live preview, which is what I personally use. 13.12, easy bug fixes. 13.13, more bug fixes. 13.14 was actually the big update. That's when the live preview was available for public access. 13.5 was basically a bug fix for all of the live preview issues that people were finding. The improvement in 13.6 sounds really small, but is actually something that I really needed, which is switching between files will now keep the undo redo history for the last 20 files. So if I'm inside of my Obsidian and I get rid of Word and I push Ctrl Z on my keyboard, which is the undo shortcut, then it undoes the thing that I've made, and then you can redo things as well. Previously, this wasn't saved to many files, so you'd go between files and be like, the undo's gone. Now it saves with 20 files, which is really nice. The improvements in 13.7 were kind of the starting point to the improvements later on in the releases, but essentially it solved some of the issues, the bullet rendering and the entering inside of block quotes. And for those that didn't know, there was a fix for the spell checker, but inside of Obsidian there is a dictionary that you can use. If you go into the editor tab inside of settings, scroll down to behavior, you can see spell check, it's turned on, and when you go into the settings you can see all of the different words that you've added to the dictionary. 13.8 saw lots of small improvements. The main one that I actually use is the search all inside of the document. So when I'm inside of this page, if I push Ctrl F, which is a hotkey I have set up, you can see I can search through the pages. And here you have the Shift plus F3 for previous, F3 for next, but this was then added. You can search for all using the Alt Enter. So pushing A, Alt Enter, it then shows me where all of the A's are, and that was a hotkey that was added, which is very, very nice, especially when I'm going through large pages trying to find one or two words. The other improvement from 13.8 that I use is this one in the Quick Switcher. So by opening up the Quick Switcher and typing something in, I can push Ctrl Shift Enter, and it creates and opens up that page as a new note. 13.9 was the public release of all of the last insider builds plus some more bug fixes. 13.2 saw loads more bug fixes, but it also added in search filters inside of the community plugins, allowing us to look for authors. So if you've been speaking with someone and you know the person that's created the plugin, but you can't remember what the plugin was actually called, then you can type in their name and it will come up. 13.21 bug fixes. 13.22 more bug fixes. Then 13.23 pushed all those previous bug fixes out to the public and then added in some other bug fixes you can see in here, which is very nice. 13.24 actually has an improvement that relates directly to something that's more recent with regards to Obsidian Sync as duplicating updates. So if, for example, two people were to push an update to Obsidian Sync, it's going to take the latest version when there is a conflict. If, for example, I'm on my PC, I make a change, I go to my phone, I then make a change, but the phone isn't synced, and then make another change on my PC to the same note, then sync my phone because the PC was updated afterwards, is going to take that sync instead. So if I've added something on my phone, it might not be synced because there was a later update on my PC. Hopefully that makes sense. Then in 13.25, we see some more shiny things. This is when they added the ability to just click onto a link on a page and it will open it up, and you can also open things up in a new page by middle clicking or control clicking, just like it happened with everything else. So if I hover over, you can see this is a link, and if I click on it, it's going to open up that video, and if I middle click on this person, it's going to open this up as a new page. For those of you that use word count, they fixed the issue with the apostrophes, so now it counts appropriately. The line swap commands have been changed, but I had those changed anyway, so it didn't affect me, but it may have affected you. So what you can do in the hotkeys is attach hotkeys to move line down and move line up. So when you're inside of a page, you can use whatever the hotkey is. So for me, control down and move line down or move lines up. And for the few Obsidian published users that may be watching, you actually were given the option to hide title headings, but I personally don't do that. 13.26 saw some of the image issues fixed. 13.27 added a command that lets you cycle between regular bullets, checkbox, and checked boxes. So if I go into my hotkeys and I go cycle bullet checkbox, you can see I don't actually have a hotkey, but if I add this and then go to the line, I can then use that to go between a bullet, a checklist, a checked checklist, and then back to a bullet. And then more improvements to Obsidian Sync, so instead of it overwriting, it tries to merge instead, which is very useful, especially when you're going between devices. and it did solve some of the issues with the mobile daily notes and the PC daily notes, which is an issue that no longer exists. And then the enter improvement actually relates to a future update. So if I'm in a block quote and I push enter, it carries on that block quote, but because this line is empty and then I push enter, it goes out of the block quote. However, if the line is empty and I push shift enter, it will then continue that block quote until I push enter, and then it will leave it and fold it all back. And the soft line wrap update with the shift enter was actually done in 13.28. 13.29 added some more bug fixes, but as you can see, also improved some of the typing performance in global search. Now, there have been some small increases in speed of a variety of different things throughout these updates, but I didn't want to go through every single bullet point because there would be far too many to go through. 13.3 pushed all of those insider updates out to the public, and also a major update to the engine, Electron 13 to 16, but that was actually changed in the next update, as you can see here, from 16 to 17. Now, if you're going to ask me what that means, it doesn't really mean anything to me because I don't understand it. All I do know is I needed to reinstall Obsidian, and it works fast and has no problems. The few bugs that were introduced by going to Electron 17 were actually fixed in 13.32, and then rectified in the public release of 13.33. Version 14 saw callout blocks be added, and this is where those block quote changes with the enter and the shift enter actually come into play. I still have the block quote in here, but if I put a square bracket in, I put an exclamation mark and then one of the identifiers, so I know info is 1, and then close that out with a square bracket, I can then come out of that block quote, and this is the callout block. What I can do is put a plus after it, so it always stays open, and if I add some text in, so enter, text, then enter, because there's an empty line, I push enter, it now comes out, and we have a block quote, and it's open because I push a plus. Now I click on the top and it closes. If I click into the text, it allows me to edit it. If I change this plus to a minus, it will then stay closed. I push it and then it opens. So the minus is closed, plus is open, and then if you click on the text, it allows you to edit the code behind the callout block. I use my markdown formatting page to help me remember what goes with what, so you can see these words bring up these colors and icons, and this can be found on my Obsidian publish, link in description, or go to the help vault inside of Obsidian, which is down the bottom here. Another small improvement to note for those of you that use Obsidian for task management, you can see here, tasks with checkmark characters other than X will now no longer have the strike-through formatting applied. So a completed task, if I click into here and go across with my arrow key, you can see there is an X in it. If I put something else, for example, a question mark, it's still ticked off because it's a symbol, but it doesn't put the strike through. So that's something you could use if you use Obsidian for task management. 14.1 improved the basic markdown tables in live preview and fixed loads of bugs with the callout blocks. Then 14.2 pushed all of those insider builds out and also added in the page hover for the starred files, and I used to use starred files all the time. Now I use them for search. But what it means is when you go into the starred panel, you can see I've got YouTube channel up, I can push control, and there it is. This is the script I'm currently working through, but control and hover allows me to see that. If I go to the page preview core plugin settings, you can see I actually used control for some of them, so it doesn't just pop up all the time, and then I just have a normal hover for the reading view and editing view, so I don't have to push control all the time, but I do for these options here. 14.3 was a big helper update, so yes, there were changes to the Vault Switcher, which not many people use, but that's quite useful, but they actually changed the help options inside of Obsidian. So now when you come and push the help button, you get this display instead of what was previously shown. So we have the official help site, which is a very useful vault of all the information you would need about Obsidian. If you don't like listening to videos like this, you can go read it and search for it there. Then you have the Discord chat, which is a great place to talk to people about Obsidian, how they use it, their workflows, etc. The official forum, more for questions, bug requests and things like that, but still useful for having conversations. And then the Sandbox Vault, which is nice to just play around in. And I think this is a very nice update for Obsidian actually giving help out to the community rather than just the Discord being the main place people went to. And then lots of improvements around the live preview. You can see the iframe works for some of the websites that was actually not allowing it to work, so that's all well and good. 14.4 added options inside of the appearance panel. So going into settings and appearance, there is now the option to change the font. So you can choose what font to use for the interface font, the text font, monospace font, etc, etc. But this may be overridden if you're using a CSS theme from the appearance panel inside of managed themes. And the continuing trend of Obsidian Sync being updated and improved, you can see there's no longer creating duplicate files, which is very useful. And they added exclusion folders to Obsidian Sync. So when we go down to the sync options, you can see right at the top you have excluded folders. So if you had a folder you don't want to sync, you can actually add it in here. I personally sync all of my folders, so there's nothing in there, but that is an option if you don't want everything going all over the place. Or if you're limited on storage space for a certain device. 14.5 then pushed all of those insider builds out, and I do know there were some issues with Electron 18, but like I said previously in the video, I don't really understand what's going on with the Electron stuff because I'm not a coder, so all I know is it's fixed now. Because as you can see, they were working on it and fixed it in 14.6, and they also added an exclusion folder or ignore filter inside of these searches, very similar to what they did with sync. So if you go to the files and link, go down to the bottom, you can see excluded files, and this will hide files from search, graph view, unlinked mentions, and the quick switcher, so you don't see them inside of search, but when I'm searching for something, I want to see everything. However, I recognize some people want to filter things out. Quick addition from editor Danny, I've actually added in my images folder inside of that exclusion folder because I don't want to see all the images pop up in my quick switcher. The main things from the 14.7 update was the ability to add dark mode and light mode to the Obsidian Publish site, and you can also change the Obsidian Publish site to adapt to the system, which is also a very nice change if you're using Obsidian Publish. The other improvements relating to previous updates and again Obsidian Sync. Then in 14.8 it was kind of like the Obsidian Publish update. And this allowed site collaboration, so you can have more than one person editing an Obsidian Publish, kind of like a website. We can now exclude certain folders when publishing, so we don't have to go through which folders we want to publish and which ones we don't, it's just a setting. And there were loads of other improvements and fixes and changes inside this update as well. For the fellow publish users, you can see inside of here we have the filter option at the top. Inside of the settings is where we can change whether we go to the dark view, etc, etc. And we also have these added numbers at the top of everything that's been selected, which is very, very nice. You can also filter things and add files that are linked to certain files, but for me, I just do it in folders because it's so much easier. 14.9 fixed an issue with the publish front matter flag. Then 14.10 was essentially the Obsidian Sync update, which allows for collaboration. So let me just explain this a second. Inside of Obsidian, you have your personal account. Inside your account, you can pay for add-on services, which is the Obsidian Publish or the Obsidian Sync. And buying Obsidian Sync gives you access to 5 vaults. You can see I have my sync vault, that's my sister's sync vault, and this is a joint sync vault. If I go to manage sharing, you can see I can add an email of the Obsidian account for that user so they can then sync to my vault. Jonathan and I both work on the PKM podcast, which is why we have a sync vault together called Internet Academics. Now you can see joining a sync vault will not count towards the 5 vault limit for collaborators, so it counts towards my vault limit, i.e. I have 3, but it doesn't count towards John's. And to my understanding there isn't a limit on this, but John and I did explore this in a recent PKM podcast episode, so feel free to have a listen to that. 14.11 added some really nice updates as well, so now inside of the File Explorer you can move or delete multiple selected items. So useful! So now if I go inside of my File Explorer, go to the tweets, I can click on the first one, I can scroll all the way down to the bottom, and then I can hold Shift on my keyboard, click, I can right click and you can see move items to, so I can move them all one place or I can delete them. Now I'm actually going to move them all to sources because I'm personally going to get rid of all of my folders inside of my sources because I never actually use the folders and it just seems redundant. So I'm now moving them all to that one folder, which will then result in just an empty folder at the top with nothing inside of tweets. And now the folder's empty, I'm going to delete it. Something that was changed in this side of the update that I'm hoping they're going to change a little bit in the future is hotkeys will no longer trigger multiple times, which does mean when I'm moving lines up and down, I have to push the arrow key each time, which is kind of a pain in the bum, but hopefully they change that in a future release. And then 14.12, they made some more fixes. Please do note that at the time of making this video, all of these updates you can see insider builds are not publicly available. So if you want to see Obsidian Sync collaboration or public collaboration or anything that I've spoken about from 14.7 onwards, you would need to be an insider, i.e. paying for the Insider Catalyst account. Or of course, you can just wait for it to be pushed public. Now, if you do want to pay for Obsidian Sync or Obsidian Publish, there is education and non-profit discounts, which you can see inside of their help vault, inside that help page, and this is all the information you may need. And you can also give out gift credits if you want to give people the ability to use, sync, or publish. You can give gift cards out, which again, you can find all the information on the Obsidian help site. And of course, as I finish up the video, they push some more updates, so the mobile app is now at version 1.2.2, which matches up to version 14.13 on PC, which I'll go through now. Now this update is just really nice. The shiny new things relates to block IDs, which are essentially block references, and I'll go through that in a second. But the other things that I mentioned previously in this video, so they fixed a note composer issue, so when you merge notes together, it wasn't updating the links, so you'd suddenly get all of these dead links. They've now fixed that problem, thank you. The move line up and down, which I mentioned earlier, and delete paragraph commands, you can now have that repeated. So instead of me tapping up, down, I can just hold it down, which is very nice. Now, these block IDs, so cool. I've got an example page shown here, so you can see testing the block reference is called block. That's what I've named it. And here I've got an exclamation mark, and then I've got the block reference in here. Yes, I know I'm in dark mode now because I remembered while I'm editing the video that you guys prefer dark mode. Apologies, I'm not changing it because, yeah, anyway. So now we've got this block in here. If I then right click on the block here, it gives me this rename block ID. I can then click, I can then add a dash and 2. You can't have spaces in block references, which is why I put the dash there. Done. Now you can see it's automatically changed it. It's updated the link. So if I go down, it now says block-2. That's so useful because previously you couldn't do it. However, if I come into this block, I get rid of that manually and then I go have a look, it doesn't work. So you have to right click to rename this block ID. But I mean, that's a very small friction point to change all of the block references, which thank you for doing this. Love it! And for those of you, for whatever reason, not already subscribed to Eleanor's newsletter, I would highly suggest subscribing to it because she gives you out weekly updates about what's going on in Obsidian and all of the different communities as well. So I'll leave a link to her newsletter in the description. And if you want to have a look at the updates yourself, again, I will leave a link to all of the announcements in the description below.